right, so we're quite fortunate to have Turner Whitted with us tonight, and I think he doesn't need too much introduction except that he's famous for making shiny balls. Or is it making balls shiny? I can't remember. Well, he has actually done a few other things in his life as well. I can attest to that. Turner's going to give us a little history of some of the people he knew and some of the projects he's had the privilege to work on, and that's it. Come on.
See if I can make it through all the wiring here. The title here, Polygons, Pixels, and People, and that's a lie because this is really about people, although I do promise there's at least one, I think there's one polygon in this talk. Now, in fact, as you've heard in some other talks, this is a retrospective from my 34 straight SIGGRAPHs and everything in between. I'm the wrong person. If you want a retrospective, you really want somebody who's been at every SIGGRAPH. So we looked, and Jim Blinn has missed a couple. Jim Foley is in Spain. He couldn't make it. So that brings us down to one person who has been to every single SIGGRAPH. Dave Kasich, would you please stand up? Raise the glass.
You're why I don't drink.
But we didn't give him any advance notice, so I've got to give the talk.
Good.
Next year.
But
it's only hardware, Turner.
the only one left. You better show up next year. So as I said, this is a retrospective. It covers a long period. It's about us. That's what I want to talk about. So first, I have to give you a disclaimer. Not only did I not go to the first 3 SIGGRAPHs, but I'm not a graphics person. My undergraduate background and my brief military career is all in measurements on transmission lines and antennas, for which we use graphs. And my master's work was all on control of nonlinear systems, for which we use 3D plots of some sort. And my initial industrial experiences in ocean acoustics. Here we see some whale traveling through. I think this is a nuclear-powered whale. But in any event, my understanding is that this is not a classified document. I pull it off the web, and let's get rid of it real quick. So given that background, when I went back to graduate school, I went to the nearest engineering school and went into a program in computer graphics that John Stodhammer had established inside the electrical engineering department at NC State. A nicely equipped lab. Again, I wasn't there for graphics. I was there for signal processing, image enhancement, everything but graphics. But this was the place to do it. This was a very nice lab, very well equipped. With John as a wonderful thesis advisor. And as with any small research group, if you were at Utah or Cornell or at any of the graphics schools of that time, then you know that you have professors, but you also have this body of students who organize themselves. And what, Henry, we call it the alpha student. The student that, we made this up last week. The student that gets things done, that everybody goes to. Every so often he'll get up and say, well, I think I'm going to lunch, and everybody follows him. So in our group, that was Nick England. And it was a very productive lab. Now, we sat there and we worked in the lab, but we also, we had libraries in those days. This was before the internet. So we would go over to the library and we would study all the literature on computer graphics. So here, for instance, you see Martin Newell's dissertation, you see Jim Clark's dissertation. Conspicuously absent is Ed Catmull's dissertation because I can't find my copy of it. By the way, would the graduate student who borrowed my 1977 SIGGRAPH proceedings please give it back? And then over here on the right, you see the October 1976 copy of Communications to the ACM. That's a separate story. I will tell you about it. We'll get to that. But having studied all of this and being as prepared in computer graphics, both in the laboratory and in the library, we were ready to engage. As we had already done some work, we'd already done part of the research we needed to do as graduate students, but it was time to go to SIGGRAPH. So in 1977, Nick and Mary took the train.
5,000 miles, 8,000 miles in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where it went, but close enough. I'm, as a 30-year-old country boy who had never been west of the Mississippi, I got on a plane, flew to San Francisco, and tried to find a cab at 3 in the morning to go to San Jose, and I didn't know where San Jose was. But we all ended up at SIGGRAPH 77, San Jose Hyatt. Beautiful place. But we were prepared. We had studied. And I said to myself, I'm here for a purpose. Very determined. I know who the people are. I know who I want to meet. I know their work forwards and backwards. I want to be part of that community. I want to learn more. I want to talk to them directly. So I had a list of people, people I want to talk to. So on the first morning of the first SIGGRAPH that I ever went to, I'm sitting there in a tutorial, Graphics 101, Martin Newell and Jim Blinn up at the front, and I'm mesmerized. My heroes. And this guy comes by and he sits down beside me, just like this. And you know how you are at SIGGRAPH where you kind of glance over and you can't read the badges, but you can incrementally do it. You try to do it unobtrusively. This guy, and this guy, he's got on his lumberjack shirt and he's got a beard. And I see the C and then the A and then the T, and eventually make out the M-U-L-L. And here I am, some grad student kid, saying, holy smoke, first hour, first day, first SIGGRAPH, I just hit a home run. So I lean over to this guy, and I say, I got a couple of questions I'd like to ask you. And you know how polite Ed is. He's the nicest guy ever in computer graphics. And so I asked him a little bit about his algorithm. I asked him about how some parts of it work. And ultimately Ed interrupts and says, look, Jim Blinn has devised a scanline algorithm for displaying curved surfaces, and it's better than the old one. And I promptly said, oh, so have I. And, and I handed this to Ed, and Ed looks at it, and this gets kind of fuzzy, because I'm kind of in a daze, and the world is floating, but I think what happened is Ed raised his hand and snapped his fingers, and this fellow appeared magically in the row in front of me. And so Ed hands him the picture, and Jim looks at it. It takes us about a minute when Jim and I are saying, so how do you detect silhouettes, and how fast does your Newton solver converge? And that's within a minute. Within 2 minutes, Blinn and I are completing each other's sentences. Within 3 minutes, the rest of the crowd says, could you guys shut up or get out of here? But this is incredible. This is magic. There are probably students out there now who are feeling the same way, at least if you guys make them feel that way. This is incredible. In any event, at the end of the day, Jim said to me, are you going to submit yours to SIGGRAPH? I said, I don't know. You think it's worth it? He said, I'm submitting mine. I said, okay, I'll submit mine too. And they both got accepted, and then we decided, without any rehearsal, to present them together. And got up, and instead of having 20 minutes for each talk, we had 40 minutes for the combined talk. We had a good time. But in the end, we ended up publishing it together, along with a third paper by Jeff Lane and Lauren Carpenter. And this, by the way, was the first color cover that CACM ever did. But the important thing here is that was the beginning of a professional collaboration and personal friendship that lasted for a long, long time. That is just amazing to me that that could come out of something so simple as being in the presence of these people. Now, having done all of that, you know, Nick and Mary, you got back on the train, didn't you? Okay, and I got back on the plane. And we all flew back, and we had work to do. And I was, you know, I had to finish up a dissertation. Nick had to go design the world's first GPU, and you know, we had a lot going on. But in the midst of finishing up the dissertation and getting back and all this, there were some ideas that I had that I couldn't let go of. So if we go back to this cover of Communications ACM, October 1976, it's a reprint of a paper by Blinn and Newell from SIGGRAPH of 1976. And the reason that I carried this in my, seriously, I carried this in my briefcase and never let it out of my sight. It's like stalking, except that it was paper. And the reason was this figure, figure 8 that you see over here, which shows what to me was the most realistic reflection ever done in computer graphics. And the question is, how do you do better than that? How can you ever be better than that? So I was sitting there, and I've been agonizing over this for months and months and months. And in the meantime, remember when I showed you that I'm not really a graphics guy, that my background is in ocean acoustics? One of the things I remember from ocean acoustics is this picture from Manfred Schroeder from back in the early 70s, which shows refraction of sound. It uses ray tracing to show refraction of sound through deep water because the index of refraction changes as a function of depth. And that's something that I had learned in that previous life that just kind of stuck there in the back of my mind. Now, you can look at this and put 2 and 2 together and say, well, gosh, it's obvious, but I couldn't. And I had the hardest time trying to pull all the ideas together to do what I wanted to do like Blinn and Newell had done. One day, Nick seemed kind of worn out and came in the lab and said, it's a hot day, I'm tired, let's go down and get a milkshake. So Nick and I go down to the Student Center and get a milkshake, and we're sitting there yakking and talking, and I start to stare at the milkshake. and and it finally hit me that you have the incident straw and the reflected straw. So that's the birth of straw tracing. But this isn't the answer to everything. This is, I mean, yes, the idea is there. Now I get it. Now I know what I want to do. Unfortunately, I was right on the verge of graduating. I was just getting ready to go to SIGGRAPH 78 to present a paper, was looking for a job, you know, because graduate students typically graduate and get jobs. John Dill had said, come on up to GM. I went up to GM, and he showed me around Detroit. The Bell Labs, where I'd done that ocean acoustic work, my previous employer, they came down to NC State and they said, come back to Bell Labs. You know, you'll like it. You got all your buddies there. And I have to explain something. We all know Bell Labs as, you know, invention of transistor and stuff like that. Bell Labs is 90% development and 10% research. And the publicity is 100% from research and none from development. And I'd been in the development organization, and I was talking to these guys about going back to the development organization. It wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but for old time's sake, I said, yes, I'll go out. I interviewed, didn't prepare for it, just went. Sort of like the last time I interviewed. The interesting thing was that in the middle of this interview trip, one of my old associates from the old ocean acoustic days grabs my schedule and says, oh, you're interviewing for Area 10. For those of you who don't know, Area 10 is the research division, that storied invention of transistors and radio astronomy and home for Nobel Prize winners and things. And I said, no way. These guys, A, they recruited MIT and Stanford, and B, they did their own recruiting, and C, they're never going to recruit a country boy like me. As a 15-year-old, I dreamed of working in that environment. We all should, because it was unlike anything else in the world. As a mediocre undergraduate, I gave that dream up. And here I got a sheet of paper in front of me that says, by the way, here's your dream if you can handle it. So I went in totally unprepared, muddled through a couple of days of interviews with these guys, and the recruiters came back and they said, could you list your first 3 choices at Bell Labs? And I said, I told you guys I wasn't going to come back. I only have one choice, and that's research. Just being hard-nosed about it. And they said, yes, but you still, okay, that means you need to be the first 2 choices. I said, what do you mean? They said, well, you'll get an offer from Murray Hill and an offer from Homedale, both of which are in the same research group. It's just at 2 different locations. And being totally unprepared and totally overwhelmed, I said, yeah, I'm a sailboat racer. I said, which one's closer to the ocean? And that's how I ended up at Homedale. Now, let me divert a little bit. How many people recognize this? You should. This is the Meyer and Sutherland paper, wherein lies the term wheel of reincarnation, one of the most famous publications. This is 1968. It's old. Down in the footnote, reference to William Ninke, Bell Telephone Laboratories, telephone conversation with Sutherland, 11 August 1967. William Ninke was a pioneer in computer graphics, a builder of graphics systems long before I ever even thought about being in graphics. But more importantly for me, seen over here on the left, he was the best manager ever in any research institution anywhere. And of course, we're talking about the fabled and famous Bell Labs here. And as you know, working for him was magical. Working in this environment was magical. It's amazing. The fellow there to Bill's left, you're right, is Arun Netravalli. As we all know, every young researcher needs a mentor who is not your boss. And Arun is the best. Did Arun become president of Bell Labs eventually? Yep. Yep. So, sorry? Your manager too. So these guys worked for a fellow named Bob Luckey, another fairly well-known engineer. Okay, they're not well-known. They're legends. These guys are legends. Imagine what it's like coming into this environment, being the dumbest guy in the building, and coming into this environment. Furthermore, they'd hired people like Brian Acklin, Neil Westy, Steve Rubin. All these guys have published papers at SIGGRAPH. You probably don't know about them unless you're very much into CMOS design or VLSI CAD. But they're great to work with, wonderful people. This is an environment, is just absolutely magical. And of course, a few miles up the road, we got people, you got Carnahan and Ritchie and people who would answer the phone when you called and answer your questions. This is, I really miss a place like this. We all miss a place like this. It's hard to duplicate. But in that environment, I actually did some spheres. And that was a gateway into a larger research environment. So coming out of this magical lab, we were able to engage with the world at large. We were able to go out and talk to other researchers, come to SIGGRAPH, and engage in conversations with a wider range. So this opened up the possibility of going and talking to other magical labs like Xerox PARC, 3333 Coyote Hill Road. Sorry?
Are you going to tell the story what Pensy said about the spheres?
No. Okay, if you insist. One of the things, do you know what it's like to have a Nobel Prize winner as your executive director? Yes, you do. and I was thrilled at the fact that, they make this announcement that our buddy Arno over here just won the Nobel Prize. You know, it's so folksy. And then he gets to be my executive director, and I'm so intimidated that I just, I can't even face the guy. But my lab is right across the hall from my office, and Arno has one of his students from Princeton come by, and they go into my office. I can overhear everything they say. I'm not in there. But I hear Arno in his distinctly loud voice saying, yeah, I want to show you this. This Whitted guy's entire career is based on that one picture. And at the time, I felt a little, I thought that was belittling. As time goes on, he's right. I'm not complaining. It actually, in fact, the whole reason for going out to Xerox and having Martin Newell check me in on February 7th, 1979, was to talk about that paper. Martin then takes me down the hall, he introduces me to John Warnock, and I'm just kind of blown away. He said, this never ends. It's pretty soon I'm going to run into Ivan Sutherland in the street and I'll know everything. But that exposure to this wider SIGGRAPH audience is the key to all the next steps we do. And in my case, we went from the research environment to Hollywood. Bill Kovacs introduced me to Bob Abel. Bob Abel beat on me for a year, saying, you need to start a company. This is in the early 1980s when everybody started a company. And eventually, but I didn't know anything about starting a company. So I went again, took advantage of this community and talked to some people that I knew, sitting at breakfast somewhere on San Francisco Bay, picking your brain. I went to the old friends and asked them, what do you do? How do you do this? People who had some experience. And, gradually started doing the things that needed to be done. Obviously, the company wasn't going to support me. I needed a day job. So I had a little hand in the middle of a parking lot on the UNC campus. Fred Brooks and I shook hands, and I became a professor. And I think that's against university policy? Probably. That's okay. By the way, I still live in New Jersey. My family's still living in New Jersey. I don't have any place to live. So Henry says, well, here, I got a spare bedroom. You didn't charge, did you charge rent? No. It just, I parked my car in Henry's front yard, and I was living in his house. And we go a step further. Something's very important. It's really nice if your wife says not only, yes, you can start a company, and I will jump in and participate and be a partner in this and add to it. And I can't tell you, that makes all the difference in the world. I also, I need a business partner, somebody knows how to run a business, somebody who can fund this, so I just go grab Mary's brother. And you can't start a software company without hardware. So we searched around. We looked for a lot of hardware. And workstations were coming into being there. So we shopped, and we needed a workstation that gave us a good programming environment, something that we could be productive in. So we, during a visit to Chapel Hill, I walked up to this guy and said, here's a purchase order for a workstation. And I didn't know you were going to be here. There's more to it than that. As you can see, we also got some free advertising out of this. So John Gage, at the time, looked after us. He's looking over our shoulder. Somehow or another, a rumor got out that we needed some extra disk space. We didn't order anything, we didn't talk to anybody, but this big box showed up on our front step. And we opened it up, and it was a humongous disk drive. Nobody would tell us where it came from for years. and we didn't order it. John it showed up. Other equipment, you know, here's a new workstation, try it out. We just kept funneling it in. I don't know how other startups work, but this is incredible. This is sort of like, you know, going into your family and saying, could you just give me everything I need? But eventually, I had to go out to the West Coast occasionally. Couldn't afford a hotel, so basically the back room at Frank and Judy Crow's house was mine until they had a baby daughter, and then I had to move out and move in with Maureen Stone and Doug Wyatt. And quite literally, it was like, hey, that's just sort of like with Henry. You know, you show up, here's your room. And out of this, we built a company, and it lasted for quite a while, and it was a real hoot. But you know, this notion of taking this community and leveraging this community to do something like that, just another example of magic. It's really incredible. Now, going forward from that, out of this has come, you know, we had professional associations too, SIGGRAPH being one of them, CGNA being a good example, including a couple of people who are no longer with us that we miss a lot. This is a very close-knit community, and in fact, there are people that we started just have common research interest that turned into personal relationships. So I don't know if these guys are colleagues or best friends. All I know is that the friendship and the relationship we have persist. It keeps on growing. It's I can't. There's no way I can express how close these associations are, and I know that you're experiencing the same thing. Because I can see you as you're sitting here hugging and shaking hands and, you know, renewing friendships. This is a magical community. It's amazing. It's in my case, and going back into research, I had the good fortune not only to have associates who are, or in this case, a boss, who is very much interested. Yeah, you can't see Jim Kajia's head in here, can you? But you know it's Jim. You can look at him and say, it's great to have a partner in research who also happens to share your interest in flying airplanes, or a partner in hardware who also has, you know, shares your interest in racing sailboats, or an associate there who happens to be one of your distant cousins. We didn't know that. No, Albie and I have discovered that, yes, we are related, and we're like 8. How many miles of line did that take? It's a different story. We don't have time for it. We have people who insist on being your big brother. We have people with whom we just sort of share war stories. And there are people that you just like. You know, people that are just so likable and so much fun. This is an incredible group of people. You can't beat this group of people. I'm talking about you, all of you. Now, in looking at this, we talk about academic institutions. We talk about what they do for us and give us. We talk about industrial institutions, especially the ones that are incredible in what they allow us to do, and then we talk about this community. But this isn't the real picture. It turns out in all of these cases that the foundation for what we're doing lies here in the SIGGRAPH community.